Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of What's Ahead. I am Sunili Suri and today I have Sai here with me again. This is the second part of of a two-part series, and we're going to, in this episode, talk about what it's like to do a PhD in the US. Right, Sai, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to come back again.
Right. So let's start off with like a lot of people work really hard for the admissions processes in the US, right? For PhD programs or master's programs. But like what really happens in a PhD? Like what work is done in a PhD?
Right. So I mean, I'm assuming this is all like after I get an admit and I've come here, what do I do? Right. So on that line of sense, I think first thing when you're doing a PhD is you work very closely with your advisor. So fundamentally, you're trying to work on a research area. You kind of decide on a topic, and it's fair that a lot of people come with some topic and then they change what they want to do because they're not really aware of the field and stuff.
Right.
But what actually happens is like you choose a particular question which is pretty much aligned, or like a research area or a topic which is aligned with your professor's interest. Fundamentally, you would choose that professor because they're already working on certain similar field, and then you start investigating a little more, coming up with research questions and coming up with different methods to answer that particular set of questions. So I think on a daily basis, that's what happens. Like anything you do is aligned to solving a problem or that research question. Yeah.
Right. And like why should people choose a PhD? Why should people go for a PhD?
Right. I think it's a great question. Like, I mean, 5 years. Why would I want to give 5 years of my life
Mm.
to something, right? I think for me, I nail it into two major reasons, right? One is I'm very passionate. I really like research. I enjoy that adrenaline of finding answers or trying out different methods, right? That's something I really enjoy. For me, it's like every day, har din ek chota sa hackathon hai. It's a new hackathon
Mm.
every day morning. It's something though I don't wake up early, but it's something I look forward to wake up. Like I wake up at 1 p.m. or 10 a.m. in the morning, but it's something I really look forward to wake up and say, hey, let's try and attack this problem. I like getting validation for a lot of my answers. Like, for example, like problem, and then I come up with certain solution. I want to understand how the community is treating this. And it's a great place to do that. Like you submit papers, you take constant feedback from your peers and people really doing well in the academia, right? And it gives you a sense of understanding where you are and what is your capacity and capability to do research. And I really enjoy that feeling, right? And it's not just taking that, it's also giving back. You're with a really smart set of people, right? And
Right.
everybody's doing so many interesting things, and there's a lot of interdisciplinary work going on. I think that's something I enjoy, and I think almost anybody who's doing a PhD really likes that part of it. And second, obviously the career opportunities which kind of open up after you do a PhD. And I love teaching professionally. Like I would love to take a data structures class someday, or I would love to teach something in the field of video games and human computer interaction or user experience and things like that. And it gives me that opportunity to do so on a very or not at not on a boot camp level or in a society or club, but at a graduate level, right? To be able to teach something which I find it very divine or prestigious. That's something I'd like to do. So it opens you the academic side of jobs as well as industry side of jobs. Also, like there are research positions which are like pretty much dedicated for PhD students. So since you're constantly trying to do that problem solving through your PhD, yeah, it's the second reason is also like you want to do you get to work in places where there's a lot of problem solving, both of which are very lucrative for me. So I really enjoy that part of it actually.
So, like you said that you work under an advisor who is already working on a particular project or a topic. So, how do
Mhm.
people choose what they want, what topic they want to work on in a PhD?
Right, I think that is possibly the most important thing in your PhD, with choosing under which advisor you want to work on. That
Mm.
fundamentally is the pillar, or like that's the building block towards what you work on, right? So I'll break this answer into multiple parts. Like one is understanding which area you're broadly interested in, right? Maybe
Right.
you're interested in HCI, or you're interested in computer vision or NLP. So you would have, so that will kind of create a subset of professors. Like there's so many professors, and you want to identify clusters of professors in which you're interested in. So मेरे case में I was interested in computer vision for a lot of period of time. So in 2020, when I applied to grad school, I was applying to computer vision professors, but then I realized this is not working. But then when I like reconsolidated my profile and I understood, okay, I can contribute a lot more to HCI. Then I started looking out for HCI professors, and within HCI, I wanted to look into experiences. So you have to understand your background as an individual, like where do you think your interest lies in, where do you think you can make strong contributions in, and that is where you start looking out for universities which have like dedicated labs on this particular areas. And मैं recommend करता हूँ, like you already, if you're looking for a PhD somewhere down the line, you're already reading research papers, and you
Right.
would know universities predominantly publish in that area. For example, video games mein UCSC has a substantial high, it's possibly the best in the world when it comes to video game research, right?
That's
So
great.
मुझे पता था like this university is definitely reputed in that sense. फिर उसके बाद आता है like what kind of advisor do I look to? For me, I had some very hard lines in terms of like किस तरह के professor, what kind of professors I wanted to work with. I wanted to make sure they're like very friendly and gentle. That's for me, it's very important. They understand mental well-being and things like that was very important for me. So I made sure the professors I applied to, I spoke with the PhD students, and you can kind of get the whole how the lab feels and all by talking to people, right? So you'll understand how the culture of the lab is. So having a very positive and supportive culture is something I really wanted. That might be the softer aspect of thing, but I think it's really important. Like 5 years you're working with them, you want to be in a good mental space. So that is something I really wanted. I wanted an advisor who is very proactive in publishing, like who's really active in publishing and who's really willing to work with you to publish.
Right.
So having a good publishing track record every year is something I look forward to. That's something I wanted. And of course, the area match, like I wanted to make sure my advisor is interested in what I'm working on. It contributes to their lab as well as it contributes to my growth, right? So in that way, I was very lucky. I have an amazing advisor. Her name is Maggie Saif Al Nazir. She's also the chair of my department right now.
That's great.
But I think when I first like wrote to Maggie, I think there were all these things were very clear. Like her PhD students were very happy. The whole lab was very friendly. Like even before I got an admit, she invited me for a lab meetings, and that shows that's very transparent, right? Right. That was great. And her publication record is out of the world. I don't want to talk about that. She's
That's so
amazing. So
cool.
I really that was another green flag for me, and I was interested in creating experiences. I never actually worked exclusively on video games, but I did have I worked on AI, ML, and robotic experiences, and I could see when I first spoke to her, I could clearly make out some areas which I could contribute to video games using my previous interests. तो मुझे
Right.
लगता है you should be able to articulate how you can contribute to that existing established research lab, right? So when you're able to figure out that argument and you talk with your advisor before you apply, and जब match होता है, you'll know it. You will know when you feel that's a right fit, and then you can take that conversation forward and convert that into an admission. I think that's how it works there.
Right. And how did you reach out to her? Or how can people reach out to their advisor in general?
Yeah, so like before applying, I think मुझे लगता है you shouldn't even apply if at least for a PhD, do not apply if you've not had a conversation in that university. I mean, some professors say that do not email me. Fair enough. If they say that, then okay, don't do it. But I would always encourage people to write a very good email or come in contact with them is to understand what their lab is, to see if you would make a good fit, to see if they're even impressed by your skills and accolades or achievements, right? That's
Right.
important. You don't want to waste $90, $100 applying to a university which is not even considering you, right?
Right.
So I think again, I'll break this into a few steps. I think the first step is obviously reading, doing substantial amount of homework in terms of what is their lab doing, where are they publishing, what is the areas they are trying to focus on, right? And then trying to draw an analogy with हमें क्या आता है, हम कैसे कंट्रीब्यूट कर पाएंगे, राइट? हम उस लैब की जो स्पेशलिटी होगा, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल माय स्पेशलिटी वाज सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग. आई कुड कोड well. I hopefully I think that was my strength, at least, right? My strength was I could program well, and I was a little creative in terms of creating products and stuff like that. And my lab strength is video games. So when these two come together, we produce a whole set of new artifacts, new games, and new research questions. So we have complementing skills. So understanding that position, understanding where you would fall within that lab, वो अपना पर रहता है. Like we have to do that homework. That would be a first step. And possibly the next step is kind of reaching out to them in terms of discussing their work. Maybe you have some questions about their work. Maybe you have some ideas in which you want to build on, right? And asking them maybe could you be part of their lab meetings? Start getting into a conversation with that lab. Try to be keep knocking their doors, right? I think that's something which is very good, so people know that you're genuinely interested and you
Right.
can make some contribution. तो मुझे लगता है वो करना चाहिए. To have discuss with the advisor, like write an email saying that you want to have a one-on-one conversation with them if they could give you 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Maybe you want to present something in their lab meeting which you think might be interesting, right? So getting that understanding of the lab, getting that environment, kind of, उसको समझना मुझे लगता है बहुत important है. I think that's the right way to do it. The wrong way to do it is it's easy, right? Just write an email saying that I'm interested in lab. I think I'd make a great fit. That does not reflect anything. मुझे लगता है it's a game of patience. एक रात में नहीं होती वो. तो धीरे धीरे थोड़ा थोड़ा build करना चाहिए that tempo, that connection, and that network. I would strongly also suggest, like, if you have an advisor which you're interested in, and that's how I got connected with Maggie also. Like, she was chairing a conference. She was chairing a workshop in Pacific Knowledge Data, PKDD. It's a very good, famous conference.
Right.
She was chairing it, and that's how I got to know her, that she works in this field. So maybe you want to attend that workshop, present something in that workshop, or just be in the audience, ask questions, get their attention, let them know why you are valuable if you are, right? So wo process, like, make a very calculated step, right? It's like it's somewhat like, how do I put this in a nice way? It's somewhat like getting into a family, or, like, getting accustomed. So
Right.
you have to take very अपने आप खुद मेहनत करना चाहिए to fit into that society, fit into that lab. So I think that's how that's a good way to go about it. Maybe there might be other ways, but this is what worked for me. So yeah.
Right. That sounds good. So, like, what does the daily routine of a PhD student look like?
Oh, yeah, I wake up at 4 a.m. and make coffee. No, I don't. That's definitely not how it works. And you might see a lot of vlogs which people wake up at 6 a.m. I'm like, dude, come
Yeah.
on, I know you can do that. So yeah, I think everybody will have their own schedules, like, and it changes every year and every quarter, because kai quarter mein class hota hai, kai quarters mein class nahi hoti. I am somebody who works late in the night. I work, my prime work time is like 9:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. That's where I'm, like, super focused and I get all my stuff done.
Right.
And I wake up really late. I wake up like 10 a.m., sometimes even later. Like, sometimes the first time I wake up in the day is my first meeting. That's when I wake up. But everybody has it different. Some people are very productive in the morning, but I can share my side of the story. If I have classes, I do have my classes in the morning hours generally. So I do wake up at 8:30 a.m., go to class at 9 a.m., or try to go to class whenever the class is. I try to keep my meetings on Tuesdays, like all my meetings on Tuesdays, so
Yeah.
that I have like free time on the rest of the days. Maybe 1 hour here and there, or some emergency meeting, or somebody just wants. The good thing is you'll have this culture of just knock your door and talk. So if somebody wants to talk, so apart from that, I keep all my major meetings on one day. I try to, at least. This quarter I have a class on Wednesday, which is just like an informal discussion about our thesis work, or like our certain topic of our PhD with our peers. So a good portion of my day goes in reading. Like, I do have to do a lot of reading this
Research
quarter.
papers.
Yeah, research paper, because I have to write like a literature review, which is something I had to submit this quarter. So obviously when you're reading, you also have to write. So you do a lot of writing, which I do not like, but you have to do it eventually.
Right.
It's not something you're used to in Thapar, right? As an undergrad, you don't write 40 pages or 50 pages. That's insane. You do that. So I also work as a GSR. That's like a research assistantship for certain projects, not my own PhD thesis, but my PhD thesis is something. But I also work as a RA, which I get funded.
Yeah.
I have to do their work also. Like, I publish in those projects also. So उस पे भी काम करना पड़ता है. So it's like I make it like 60% RA work, 40% my thesis, and eventually as I go down the line PhD, that the coins will shift, like maybe 80% my work, 20% RA or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much how I spend. I try to cook. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I order food, or just make very quick hacky meals from Instagram reels. So yeah, that's pretty much how a day would be for me. Yeah.
It's like, right. So you talked about RA, right? Or like just internships in general. How can you get internships or research assistantships in the US when you're a PhD student?
Cool. Again, two-part question. One is the RA-ship, RA or TA-ship, or there are other posts called graders and readers and tutors and whatnot.
Right.
So these are generally positions assigned for a class. Like for a TA, there's a class, so there's a teacher who's taking a class, and they want 5 grad students who can TA for undergrad. So then you would apply to that professor saying that I can contribute in your class in so and so ways because मेरे पास ये पुराना experience है. And it's up to them to take you. And if they
Right.
do, you get a monthly stipend, which you can use for your rent, food, and whatnot. Some universities, I think UCSC also does that. They give you a tuition waiver if you're a TA or an RA. They cover your insurance if you're an RA or a TA. So RA is more like, okay, there's a PhD lab, there's a project going on which is funded, and they're looking for people who can contribute to that project. And you feel that your expertise kind of aligns with that, you can contribute to that project. You would apply to the professor. We call them principal investigators. Like एक project के लिए जो professor head होती है वो principal investigator बोलते हैं. If they are interested in hiring you, you would get hired. Right? Generally ये PhD students के लिए assigned होता है because they're the ones who are actually pushing their thesis, and वो projects बहुत correlated होता है. So that's what they do. TAs generally masters को भी मिलता है, PhD वालों को भी मिलता है. फिर internships जो होता है, right, like वो जो summer में होता है, basically summer
Yes.
internship.
Yes.
I was fortunate. I got to do one internship last year. So I was a UX researcher in a company. तो उसमें क्या होता है, you can, again, it's like how you do it in India, right? You would apply for companies through referrals. I didn't have to do a referral, thank God. I just got it through email. Like they reach out to, like people reach out to if you're very active on LinkedIn and you're posting stuff which is very related to that particular post. Like I had very targeted posts. I know that I wanted to work in a few companies, so every post on LinkedIn was very dedicated to those companies. So maybe that worked out for me. So they will reach out, or you will reach to them, and you'll have an interview process. So for same, there's no visa hassle and all. It's pretty simple. You would just continue. You would work those 2 summers, which is
Right.
like very nice. Like you will get experience in the industry. It's also financially very rewarding. So in that way, I think you could do a software engineering, or you could do like a UX research or whatever your field works on, right? So I think
Right. So like making a segue from like internships to jobs, like what are the
Mm.
job opportunities after a PhD? What possibly can people do after they're done with the PhD?
Yeah, I'll speak it from an Indian perspective. Like, I mean,
Right.
my nationality is Indian, and so for me, when I came to a PhD, obviously, I am putting 5 years of my life here. मुझे कुछ पता होना चाहिए, right? I left a job in India which was like decent enough, and I could have survived there. My master's भी नहीं करा, so obviously I had this question: what can I do after my PhD? Right? So first things, which is generally the most regular one, I guess, is coming back to academia. You can be a professor, right? You can be a professor in the US. I can be a professor in Europe. Like, who wouldn't want to be a professor in Europe? It's so cool,
Yeah.
right? You could also be a professor in India. That's something I really aspire. Like maybe one day I would be a professor in India. Who knows? So yeah, that's definitely an option, right? That's the first option. Second option is you can be like a research engineer in companies like Facebook or whatever company has that research positions. मेरा फील्ड में I do a lot of HCI, human computer interaction, so I have like opportunities for UI design, like the regular the regular jobs, that's all open. But apart from that, there are dedicated UX research roles होते हैं जहाँ some company like Meta, I interned in Meta again. So that was like a dedicated PhD role, so मैं वहाँ भी काम कर सकता हूँ चाहिए तो, right? So that's one way to go ahead. And I think the third one is you can always come back, like maybe down the line you can always go into like management side of academia, like deans and stuff like that. So you need a PhD to somewhat venture into that academic setting of like a professor, assistant professor. So two major lines, being in academia or being in the industry. So it opens up both the opportunities. And sometimes I have seen that if you have a PhD, it does count as work experience in some companies, and you have that little edge over like in terms of like managerial roles down the line. So yeah, I think that's the two major opportunities which you would do after a PhD, I guess. Yeah.
Right. And like last question, a fun question. What are the 5 essentials for a PhD student?
Right. I think 5 is a lot of numbers. I'll kind of put them as I go, and let's see how many we come up with. I think really being passion is something. Passion is something you really need. I think you cannot work for 5 years without that amount of passion.
Right.
But you're right, like passion will die off sometime. If passion is something you'll have for a few days and then it'll go down eventually once you get your hands messy with it, right? So even more than passion, I think consistency is something which you want. Dedication, being dedicated and being loyal to the system. Like you want to be loyal and graduate with a PhD, right? Being loyal to that thought, being very consistent in your effort. I think that is important. Passion. So that's three. And I think it's very important to have a very kind mind. Like मुझे लगता है kindness बहुत जरूरी है. People might not say this, like why do you need to be kind? But when you think kind and when you think with respect to people, how do you want to contribute to the society or that community? उस particular research area को आप आगे कैसा लेना जाते हो, right? Then better thoughts आएंगे, right? So being selfless and kind might help. And also I think being strong, I think it's very important. Like you stay away from family, your food is not the great, सबसे ज़्यादा depression खाने पे आता है. It's not easy to make friends as a PhD. uh, Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's more on me that I don't make great friends, but it's still difficult. Like you have a lot of things to do, and it's not, and especially it's very hard in back in India to explain to some section of people like क्या कर रहा है 5 साल, right? Like why are you not earning after 2 years of money? And that's also a very hard thing. I feel like अपने masters के जो friends होते हैं उनका नौकरी मिल जाता है, पैसा आ रहा है, but you're still like in grad school stipends and all. So being strong, I think, is very important. So I think these 4 or 5 factors kind of pitch in to help you sail through your PhD. I'm very young in my PhD, like I'm just 2 years down, but so
Yes.
far I think these are
Yeah.
things I can see. Yeah.
Cool. That brings us to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for being a part of this. There was a lot to learn, and I'm pretty sure the audience also had a lot of takeaway. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me for 2 of your seasons. Looking forward. Yeah.